Merry Christmas to everyone. And as the football year comes to its close, today we discuss our end of year awards. Some of the awards here are going to be our best and worst calls of this entire year, player of the year, surprising team of the year, worst VAR decisions of the year, and many, many more. Without further ado, let's roll that intro. Hello and welcome to Lost in Possession podcast. If you are here for the first time, please do us a very quick Christmas favour. Hit the like button and hit that subscribe button for weekly football content. And as always, it is absolutely free. Let's get cracking. As I said, we've got a lot to get through today. We will save our best and worst disaster calls for the end of the episode. We will kick things off with most surprising team of the year. And this could apply to any team in any league across the world. So, Jamie, we'll come to you first. Who did you go for and why?
See, I don't think you two are going to like my one here, but I've got Man City for the most surprising team. So hear me out before you start criticising me. At the start of the year, we've just come back off the World Cup, and City weren't looking that great. So the fact that they've gone into 2023 and done what no English club has ever done and win 5 trophies in a calendar year, that has to be surprising. Something that's never been done in English football to be done. I think that you have to have that as a big contention, and it's not winning. The only one we didn't win was the League Cup, which people consider the least. So I think it's definitely fair to actually have us in there. You may call me biased, but I'm just going to have to accept it.
Yeah, let's start the disagreements early. That is definitely biased. Man City being quality is not surprising to absolutely anyone.
But 5 trophies is...
Yeah, that's impressive, but it's still not surprising. Like on your day, you're the best team in the world at the minute. Not surprising at all to me. I went for a Spanish team, and we got to talk about Girona. You can take the small win because they're part of the City,
City group.
dodgy empire, whatever you want to call it. But what this team have done is absolutely remarkable. 18 games into La Liga, they're joint top of the league with Real Madrid. They're above. I mean, they're 7 points clear of Atletico Madrid and Barcelona out of nowhere. So for me, there is other teams that have done well this season, but the most surprising, from seemingly nothing to potentially winning La Liga or at least competing, what Girona are doing is absolutely special. So I don't think there can be any other choice for me. Reese, who you got?
I think both are very fair shouts. Everyone keeps writing off City and they keep coming back. Girona are doing exceptionally well as well. I actually went for Wolves. I think Wolves are a team that it's always been looking doom and gloom for them, particularly from my side. Looked like they turned a corner when they appointed Lopetegui last year. He left. They appointed Gary O'Neill, which frustrated a lot of fans. Terrible start. And they're beating all the big boys at home, and they've just won 4-1. But Brentford, they're not looking at relegation at all. So if anything, they're looking at the top 10. So I've gone for Wolves just because I think they're constantly, again, turning the corner. Yes, they haven't won the trophies like Man City, but for the general dismay that they've been looking at, they've been doing very well.
I think if they'd achieved something, I'd kind of agree, but I don't really think they've achieved anything other than
Girona.
Huh?
Girona haven't achieved anything.
Yeah, but they're a team that small competing at half the season, being in the title race is spectacular. Whereas Wolves being mid-table isn't spectacular, is it?
Well, it is for a team with no money. I mean, they haven't got any money to spend, have they? Yes, I suppose Girona, where they're based in Catalonia, you think they'd all support Barcelona around there. So, yeah, given their dues, but they've also got the backing of quite wealthy owners to help them out. Let's not forget.
Who are they? Don't know.
Yeah, I'm not sure how much they've spent, but it's not been much.
I think if you're going with a Premier League team that's lower down the top rather than the top, you probably have to look at Luton, because no one expected Luton to get up to the Premier League last season, and they've not actually been in the Premier League. Correct me if I'm wrong, in the Premier League era anyway.
Yeah,
and the fact is, they're now competing. They're not. Everyone thought they'd be bottom of the league, getting whipped most weekends, and what it takes a 95th minute winner for Arsenal to beat them. City have to come from behind to beat them 2-1 at Luton's ground. So I think they've been quite surprising considering how small of a club they are. You probably wouldn't expect them even to get out of Championship. So they've done it all over 2023. Been quite surprising, I'd say.
Yeah, I think that's a great shout. Beating Newcastle in there as well, holding Liverpool. So I think, yeah, great shout. Villa as well, maybe a bit of recency bias, but Villa in the talks of a title race. I think they're also they've done well.
15, 16 wins at home in a row, and ending it with City and Arsenal 1-0 victories.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
A lot of good teams in there, but yeah, we've all gone different. So by all means, if you're watching the video, pause it for 2 seconds, put your comment below. Who's the most surprising team for you this season? Let's move on. Quite a fun one here. Worst VAR decision of the year. I'll kick things off. It does involve Chelsea. I remember wanting to punch the screen at this point. Obviously, one of the craziest games of the season was Spurs Chelsea, and for me, the worst one that I can remember. I mean, look, there's been a lot, so if you've got another opinion, as always, put it in the comments. But I think the Romero kick out in that game. So for those who remember it, I can't remember who he kicked. I want to say Cucurella. He was literally on the floor, kicked out, I believe, don't quote me on the Cucurella, but kicked out on the floor. VAR looked at it and still didn't send him off. As we know, 10 minutes later, he then did a ridiculous red card challenge again and got sent off. But at the time, I remember thinking, this is an absolute, just, everyone chucks around, corruption when it doesn't go their way. But this was just disgraceful. So for me, that's the one I can really remember that shocked me the most. What about you guys? Jamie, come to you first.
Mine is not that. I think that was a crap decision. Like, you can't just kick out on players. That's just in the rules. That just is a red card. But the one that I've got with the worst is the Diaz offside against Spurs for Liverpool, where you've got an actual. You've even heard the recording going, it's offside, and then they play the game on. I don't think you can, when you've actually got the decision right out loud and then you still get it wrong on the pitch. I don't know. I just don't understand how you can correct that. That to me is just the worst VAR call possible. It can't get any worse than that. When you've realised it's completely, you've done everything right, and still give the wrong decision on the pitch.
Yeah, good point, actually. Reese, did you have anything different?
As somebody who doesn't really care about VAR, I have had to come up with some decisions on here. So if we want to look at the bias from a bias perspective, I suppose the Tony equaliser against Arsenal right at the start of the year, which ended in a 1-1. Norgard was supposedly offside position or whatever. Even though they've used it to mask what was a poor performance from Arsenal on the day, the overall knock-on effect of that was quite important because they drew and obviously had a bit of a wobble there, and that's 2 points lost from an Arsenal perspective and what was that title race at the time. But I think my main one has actually been for the first game of this season, which was Man U 1, Wolves 0, where Klasic, if that's how it's pronounced, was clattered by Onana, and nothing was given there. You would argue that again would have had an impact on the game where United were poor and Wolves were very unlucky. So even though it hasn't affected anything yet, we haven't seen this doomed Wolves to relegation or anything, or affect a European position. But overall, that was a poor performance, and that was a poor decision overall. And I think Wolves did feel hard done by there.
Absolutely, I completely agree. That was my sort of second choice one, the one where Onana's, I've seen punches thrown on streets less than that, and they get done for assault, and Onana gets away with not even conceding a penalty. And that was obviously last moments of the game, so that literally would have been 1-1 if they scored the penalty, of course. But it was just such a bad decision.
Yeah, completely agree. And on the subject of Onana, I guess that brings us nicely onto the best and worst Premier League transfer of the year. Let's start with the worst. Obviously, I've mentioned it. I kind of give my answer away. I've got to go with Onana. I'm sorry, United fans might hate me, but the simple reality of this, the way I'm looking at this transfer is expectation versus reality. He was in the Champions League final. He was one of the most acclaimed keepers in the world, seemingly. A lot of that was obviously based on that Champions League run and his performances in the final, etc. But I think if you ask United fans at the time, they would have said Onana is one of the best keepers in the world. Months, well, I say months later, even weeks later, the amount of errors, honestly, the amount of errors that this apparently one of the best keepers in the world has made for United, and you've seen them struggling this season as a result, is absolutely ridiculous. Like 4, 5 off the top of my head, where he's just gone for a ball, missed it. In that Wolves game, he got away with it, but imagine that on top of that as well, giving away a last minute penalty. You've had the paper hands where he just has shots at him and they just go through his legs or his hands or like honestly, I think it's probably 5 or 6 big errors leading to goals this season already, and we're what, halfway through. So I think he might improve. He might end up being the keeper that United fans want, but my word, has he been a flop? Honestly, so he's my worst. What about you guys?
I'm sticking at United, but I've gone with Mason Mount instead. Onana, the things that keep me off Onana, because like you say, he's made so many errors. Is he's actually got the, I think, joint most clean sheets in the league, which is just ridiculous considering all the mistakes that he's made. But obviously, some of them are in the Champions League as well. I've gone with Mason Mount because I thought he would be sort of the missing middleman in between the Casemiro and Fernandez for their midfield, and for all the sort of moments he had at Chelsea, sort of the best stats. If you looked at it, it was like who was the best player at Chelsea at the time. Maybe last season, 2 seasons ago, was Mount, getting all shots, possession, passes, all this. He was number one in the team. So the fact he's gone to United, I know he's had injuries, but even when he was playing, he wasn't doing anything. He might as well not been on the pitch. So, and for the amount of money that was spent on him in that, which is more than sort of say Onana's fee, I think, or what? Yeah, it was. And what I thought he would be at United, I think he's been the worst transfer of 2023 Premier League sort of sides.
I think that's harsh. I've got to say, I think that's harsh. Like when Man United signed him, I said the whole thing was weird as it is, but his best position is CAM, right? And he was never going to take Fernandez out of the team. So then when he was
Not
playing, he was
to compliment him though. It was meant to be where I guess Ericsson's role was last season. It was instead of him, and he'll have more legs than Ericsson, just being younger. It's
yeah,
never replaced Fernandez.
yeah. But I think he was played sort of CDM and he was played a bit out of position. And then he got injured. But albeit, as you said, his stats for the games he played were shocking. But I think it's harsh. I don't think he's the biggest flop personally, but it's been a nightmare, absolute nightmare transfer either way you look at it. Reese, what about you?
I thought you're harsh on Onana. 6 clean sheets in the league don't lie. That's more than Raya. That's more than Edison. You know, it's joint with Allison. He's what a modern day goalkeeper is. You're going to get clarity or erratic performances, but they will back it up with clean sheets. I've actually gone for Mason Mount. As harsh as that might sound, I look at it and I think for the money spent, I thought he would fit perfectly into Ten Hag's system, but he's only managed to get 1 assist this season. That was in the League Cup, so not great. Bearing in mind that in a very poor Chelsea team last year, he got 6 assists and 3 goals. So, you know, what's happened there? Is it's just not working at United? I don't know. But for the money paid for him, you know, it's not been good enough. I hope it works out for him, but it's been poor. Let's be honest, it's been poor. it looks like he's been invisible on the pitch at times. You know, you might as well been playing with 10 men for them at the moment. And that's not a criticism amount. That could be a whole factor of things, confidence, tactics, whatever. But I think for the money paid, he's not been good enough.
Yeah, I think with Onana though, like you sound being harsh, but the clean sheets element is also part of the defense, right? But mistakes, obvious mistakes, like when the ball's at him and he drops it through his hands, that's not a defensive error. That's his own fault. And for a keeper to come in with so much hype and make that many errors, like keepers make errors, don't get me wrong, but maybe 1, 2 max. He's genuinely made 5 or 6 big errors. So I think the clean sheet stat, I get what you're saying, but I think it's a little bit.
It does pave over the cracks. For actually his performances, like he is making sort of high amount of saves at United, which is a problem with the defense. But the goals he has conceded haven't been good enough for any standard of keeper. We're talking Sunday League. We don't expect keepers to do that in some of the cases.
I think it's a mixture. Before we move on, though, it is a mixture of things. Like, yeah, he's made mistakes, but this is what modern day keepers do. There's so much an emphasis of letting them play with their feet. None of them seem to be able to hold a ball anymore. Ramsdale's not best at it. Raya's very shaky with it. Edison's probably the best at it. I don't think Alisson's much of a feet keeper. I think he's more of a traditional keeper, in my opinion, hence why he's probably got the best record. But I think he has been let down with his defense as well. You know, I think there's nobody at the back there telling them what to do. And I think he benefited from that at Inter. You know, he gets Bastoni in front of him, De Vrij in front of him, DeMarco probably as well. So if they're a little bit, I think, yes, sometimes clean sheets do mask it, but I think he is going to be better for them in the long run.
Yeah. And to be fair as well, anyway, like a lot of the mistakes were in the Champions League, which obviously that's a Premier League stat. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, United conceded more goals in that group stage than any other English team in Champions League history. So, yeah, 50-50 on that one. Let's move on to moments of the year. So this might be a game, a goal, a signing, and obviously we'll each be personal to us. Reese, we'll come straight back to you. What was your personal moment of the year?
Personal moment of the year was, I think, Reece Nelson's goal against Bournemouth. From that perspective, 2-0 down, fight it back to 2-2, time's ticking out. He gets the ball, controls it lovely, whacks it straight in. Stoppage time, the scenes at the end of that goal. You know, if we think of the significance of what that should have been for the title race, you know, that's when people thought maybe they're going to do it. Not me, obviously, but that's when people thought they were going to achieve, Arsenal were going to achieve. And the significance of that goal was so big. You know, if he hadn't have scored that goal, the title race would have been done way before, you know, and everyone would have been deflated. So that sense of belief that football can give you was shown in that moment there.
Yeah, that was yeah. To be fair, I can't disagree. The scenes there, quality goal as well. Importance of it, yeah, definitely a quality moment. That Jamie, what about you?
Well, my moments sort of slightly personal. Well, I'll say both are personal. I'm going to give an honourable mention to Gundogan's goal in the FA Cup final after 12 seconds. You know, to be 1-0 up against United, couldn't have asked. You just can't ask for a better start or anything like that. However, I think it's more, be it when I was there in the Champions League final, Rodri's goal. Just for me personally, it's the moment that we've been waiting for. I've gone to a Champions League final seeing us not score, so to actually score this time was brilliant, and then to win it was just one of the best moments that you can ask for. Really, I don't think there's much more I need to say on that.
Nah, that's everyone's dream. Screamer in the Champions League final to win the treble. For me, again, obviously, I've gotten something personal. Chelsea. There's not been much on the pitch moments. I've gone for a transfer signing instead. But I think over summer, the absolute drama, the scenes of us beating Liverpool to Caicedo and then Lavia on top of that as well. I remember I was on holiday at the time, the drama, constantly scrolling Twitter, checking Fabrizio's tweets, and there was so much drama about the Caicedo transfer. And I remember waking up and it was went to bed as Liverpool had put in the record bid, thinking basically it's done. How have we bottled it? To then wake up to see Chelsea had then Caicedo rejected Liverpool. Absolute drama. I remember waking up and I was like, oh my God, oh my God. And she thought someone had died or something. It was and it was literally we'd signed Caicedo. So yeah, I think for me, not much on the pitch celebrations this year, but the transfer drama was up there. Let's move on to game of the year. I'll carry on here. Again, involves two of our clubs at the game in person, so definitely biased. But for me, it was the Chelsea Man City 4-4. Just ridiculous. Like you don't get 4-4 draws that much in football these days. Two big teams in a game that we weren't expected to even get a result. Impressive performance, drama, end-to-end football, decisions, obviously drama with Anthony Taylor as the ref as always, penalties, late goals. It had it all. Absolutely had it all. So for me, that was my game of the year.
Well, I'll go with non. I'm not going to be biased like you, Jordan, and picking one of our teams. I've gone with Wrexham Notts County, which was the massive game that needed to of two teams who were hitting 100+ points to go up into the football leagues, and the game at Wrexham, which finished 3-2, just had everything. Which, like, obviously, I could have even put in the moment of Ben Foster saving that penalty in the sort of last minutes. But even if you look at the quality of the goals, the goal that came in the 45th plus 4 minutes, the free kick from Notts County, which was sensational. And then you had just the dramas of end to end, where it goes back to 2-1 to Wrexham, to 2-2 to 3-2, and then the penalty at the end. I think that game was just phenomenal all over, and as a neutral for that game, it was just so enjoyable. Whereas when I don't have anything on the line for it, is a factor to just how good of a game it was.
Yeah, great shot. Reese?
Yeah, watching both those games as a neutral really was impressive. But I went City 4, Chelsea 4. Sorry, the other way around, Chelsea 4, City 4, just because of the drama involved in that game. End to end. It looked like both teams, they couldn't keep it out, but they could definitely keep putting it in the net. It could have been as a 7-all, 8-all, 9-all. It was end to end. And like I said, I think big games here in England do let us down quite a lot. And I think that did not. So the significance of that game could be important.
Agreed. Let's move on. Player of the year. Again, this doesn't have to be Premier League, can be any league. Jamie, we'll start with you. Is it a Man City player?
Of course it is. Don't win 5 trophies and not have the best player of 2023. He scored 50+ goals. It's Erling Haaland. Broken the Premier League goal scoring record in his first season. Big goals all over. I've gone with Haaland. Should have won the Ballon d'Or, but the less said about that, the better. When you've got journalists picking their favourites, it's just a ridiculous system. But yeah, Erling Haaland for me. He gets my award. That's what's important. That's what he wanted, I think.
Surprise of the season, that is Jamie picking a City player. Reese, over to you.
Yeah, Haaland, give us your address. I'm sure your award will be in the post. I think Haaland has been the player of the year from a domestic perspective. He just can't seem to stop scoring. Yes, he's had a bit of a rough patch latter stage of this year, but come on, that guy's a machine. Without him, there's none of those trophies. But I've actually gone. I've stayed domestic, but I've also abroad at the same time. That's Jude Bellingham. Guy's a monster. We saw, someone who was a fan of him when he broke out at Birmingham. I never thought he was going to go on to Real Madrid like this. He got better and better at Dortmund. We saw him, do amazing at Dortmund, amazing at the World Cup last year. At such a young age, he's a leader. He's driving that team. He played well against Scotland as well. earlier in the season internationally. He's been a monster and he's banging goals in for Real Madrid, and he looks like he's going to be the best player. Him and Haaland are going to be competing for the best player in the world along with Mbappe for the next 10 years. You know, even longer for him because he's younger. So can't knock it. And bearing in mind he comes from such down-to-earth roots in a way, you know, I give him a lot of respect for that.
So I went with the same as you, Reese, actually. Bellingham. I think both players, to be honest, Haaland's been phenomenal. Let's not, shit on that. But Bellingham, what he's done, like to have the hype, to get the dream transfer to Real Madrid, and to not only not be a flop, but somehow to over deliver on the hype he had at the biggest club in the world when they need it the most. I don't even know the stats off the top of my head, but the goals, he's a centre midfielder. You've got to remember this. And every single game, he's been putting in goals and assists, goal after goal after goal in the Champions League, in the Liga, late goals, late winners. I just think the age he's at, what he's doing to go to the biggest club in the world for 100 odd mil and then somehow over deliver at the age he is, I think it's got to be Bellingham. But Haaland, yeah. I feel bad not saying Haaland,
I
but
think this is massive recency biased because you got to remember he was at Dortmund in the early part of 2023, and they're the team that's bottled the league, literal bottled the league on the final day, and he's a part of that. So to go over to someone who I keep saying has won 5 trophies this year, ridiculous. But don't worry, Haaland, you're my winner. I'll stand up for you because I can't agree with these two.
nah, look, they're both done well. Both absolute ballers and both impressive to do what they're doing at the age they're doing it. Okay, last but not least, we've got to cover our best and worst calls of the season. So Jamie, let's start with you, and you're going to be covering Reese's.
Yep. I'll start with you. I'll start with your best, Reese. I'll get you some sort of your ego can go up a bit. I think it has to be your constant commitment to Arsenal not winning the league last season. No matter how many points you were in front, whether it's 8, 9, 10 points ahead, you were very adamant you're not winning the league. You are still are in 2023. Towards the end of it for this season, it's sort of like you said, with the Bournemouth game being such a big moment, people started to properly believe. There was always talk about it, and there was even sort of some doubt creeping in my mind. Even though I'd still back City, you're still very adamant on that. So I have to say that's probably your best call on it. Your worst, probably not one of the worst calls out there, but you did have Wolves to go down in the 2022-2023 season, and they were so comfortable staying up. They came 13th, which obviously isn't that brilliant, but it was so comfortable. They even had a dreadful last 5 games of the season and still were nowhere near the bottom. So, yeah, there's your best and worst calls of the year.
I'll jump in with Jamie's best and worst calls. I think the best one's fairly recent, but the prediction of Man United in the last 2 games. We did the Champions League podcast. You said you're pretty confident they're not going to win either, and they didn't, and they finished bottom of the group, which was a shock, but also given how they've been, not that surprising. But we got to talk about the worst call, the FPL one, game week 1, everyone watching, all the pressure on you, putting in Diaz and Stones in your first draft for them both to not then play. Obviously, a bit of bad luck with injuries, but if anyone had been following that and put them in your team, they would have been absolutely wrecked on day 1. So yeah, got to give a shout out to that.
Yeah, I was in McDonald's car park trying to correct my team once I found out they were both injured. Too late for the video. I did put a comment on there, but yeah, can't do anything about injuries.
All right, Reese, let's hear it.
Yeah, George, I think your best call was definitely the United City game that took place earlier this year. Even though we thought it would be a close game, you predicted a 3-0, if I'm not mistaken. You predicted exactly, and on top of that, predicted the exact scorers, which was just absolute scenes. So you can't go wrong there. Maybe you should be doing more of the FPL predictions than Jamie. And I also think that your worst call was backing Burnley to survive comfortably and be mid-table, because they've been pretty disastrous so far. Still hope, but they've not been great. But for that to be your worst call shows that you've had a very good year. So nothing to be ashamed of.
Yeah, bloody companies let me down there. But look, that wraps us up for our end of year awards. There's been plenty to disagree with there on every single one. If you have a minute, pause the video right now. Give us your personal awards for each of the ones we've done and let us know your thoughts in the comments. But as always, Happy New Year. We'll see you in 2024. Like, comment, and subscribe. You know the drill.